Welcome to another Gobbet Opus. This is number 16 from September 2nd, 2008. Cleanliness is next to something. Hand hygiene is an important part of infection control, although you wouldn't know it from some of the studies that looked at hand hygiene rates. It takes, however, about a decade for new information to get disseminated into the medical field, so I do have to cut healthcare providers some slack, as we have only known about the importance of clean hands for 160 years, thanks to Semmelweis. Curiously, every time I've had an interaction with the healthcare profession myself, and here I am, chief of infectious diseases at my hospitals, people don't wash their damn hands in front of me. It just happened the other day when I had to take my son into the emergency room. He's fine, thank you for asking. But he were going to put an IV in him, and they didn't wash their hands until I told them to. Drives me nuts. I suspect that at some level people have trouble believing, at a gut level, in the germ theory. Germs are just so damn small, and if you can't see it, it doesn't exist. As part of my duties as chair of infection control, we have made great progress in increasing compliance of hand hygiene and have seen the infections in the hospital fall accordingly. Especially beneficial is the use of alcohol foam, a pressurized canister that squirts out a ball of alcohol foam into your hand with the consistency of whipping cream. Imagine my surprise to discover the foam was supposed to be used topically. I had been using it like Cheese Whiz. When I was a kid, by the way, to take a whiz was to urinate, so does anybody really know what's in a can of Cheese Whiz? Anyway. Part of the campaign to increase hygiene is the motto, "It's okay to ask," allegedly empowering patients to ask their provider if they have washed their hands. As if. For entertainment's sake, I spent a couple of hours asking patients if they understood these signs. They did. And if they would ask, they most certainly would not. When I asked why they wouldn't ask if they washed their hands, most said something to the effect that they did not want to risk alienating their nurse or their doctor, which is not a bad policy. I wouldn't want to piss off the person who is bringing me my morphine. I am suspicious that the approach to hand hygiene suggested by the It's Okay to Ask campaign is fundamentally bankrupt. Airlines had a similar campaign about flying, and it was okay to ask if the wheels were down at landing because the pilot, just maybe forgot. No one would fly. The secret, if there is one, to these complicated problems is to somehow make the default action hand washing. And hands are not the only problem. If push comes to shove, we can always have them removed. More than hands have been associated with the carrying of bacterial pathogens. 2 studies have found pathogens on neckties. I've been looking for a reason to give up on those worthless pieces of cloth, and now I have an infection control reason to no longer wear a tie. I suppose I could go with a bow tie, but it takes far more panache than I possess to look good in a bow tie. And string ties? Well, no one looks good in a string tie. Other inanimate objects in the hospital can also carry bacteria. Public phones. Quote, 12 different types of bacteria were found on the surface of telephones. The level of bacterial contamination for the telephone mouthpiece was increased to its highest point in October and its lowest point in August. It was also found that the mouthpiece was about twice as contaminated as the earpiece. End quote. Keyboards and mice? You betcha. Quote, microbiological analysis from samples in patient's room yield 26 contaminated samples from keyboard and mouse, 6%, compared with 18 positive results from other fomites within patient's room, 3%. At the physician's computer terminal, 2 samples obtained from the house, 6.3%, showed positive microbial testing, end quote. Beepers, of course. Quote, microorganisms are isolated from all pagers. 21% yielded Staph aureus, of which 14% were MRSA. Cleaning with alcohol reduced the total colony count by 94%, end quote. And stethoscopes. Quote, all but 6 bacterial cultures were positive, 85.7%. Staph species were the most common contaminants. 1 case of MRSA was encountered. Gram-negative organisms, just where are they putting these stethoscopes, were isolated in 21%, including Acinetobacter baumannii, end quote. The world is a far more bacteriologically contaminated place than you can even begin to imagine. You do not even want to know what is in your mouth, If you are a real germaphobe, you may never kiss again. Now, in the real world, it's no big deal. But in the hospital? I wish germs were the size of those creatures that were put into Chekhov's ear. At least then we could see them. I try and alcohol foam all my accessories, except for my iTouch. All of our electronic gear is covered with a thin layer of us and our bacteria. And you're wondering about all those people who surf the web while they're in the toilet? Not me. I don't even pick my nose. But I'm sure others do. And I'm not sure I want to douse my iPhone if I ever get one in alcohol. But how else to clean it? So many contaminated surfaces, so little time to disinfect. Relevant articles for this podcast were The Stethoscope as a Vector of Infectious Diseases in the Pediatric Division, Microbiology of Public Telephones by the Golga Frencham Arc Fleet, published in Journal of Infection, Keyboard and Mouse as a Reservoir for Pathogens in the Intensive Care Unit, published in the Journal of Clinical Monitors and Computing. And that's it for this Gobbet Opus. Don't forget, alcohol foam your entire body and everything connected with it. See you next time. Oh, and go to iTunes. Write a glowing review of this. You know my fragile ego demands it.